Welcome to Rainmakers, where we cover the world, and this is a very, very special time for Gail Romero, the executive producer, and myself, because this is the first of three special issues coming from an interview that we did with Reeta Roy of the Mastercard Foundation. And Gail, I was so impressed with the substance of her information.
You know, Stan, not only the substance of her information, but the substance of her as an individual.
Yeah, you did a lot of research into her background in preparing for the interview. Tell us about Reeta.
Well, so Reeta Roy has had a long career in sort of the global health side of things. She originally started out at the UN Foundation, and then she worked on the President's Council for AIDS, HIV and AIDS.
Oh, PEPFAR.
PEPFAR.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went into the private sector, and she went to work for Bristol Myers Squibb and then Abbott Laboratories, where she was actually in China with Bristol Myers
Squibb, yeah.
For 3 years.
So even though this is not a biography of Reeta Roy in these interviews, what this is, though, is you really kind of need to know where Reeta is coming from because of where she could go with one of the largest foundations in the world.
Right, and the Mastercard Foundation is actually a $3 billion organization, and was started, this is very interesting, when the Mastercard company went public in 2006, they set aside $3 billion in assets just for the foundation. So it's completely separate, and Reeta Roy then came on a couple of years later.
So what was it, do you think, that made Reeta Roy tick? What makes her do the things that she does in the Mastercard Foundation that takes it beyond a charge card and takes it into having this incredible results that they seem to be having?
Well, you know, I think it starts out with Reeta when she was just a young child. And she'll tell us a little bit about that and how she came about this and her philosophy of philanthropy. So it's sort of ingrained in her from very early age. But she took it a step further. And it's interesting, she went to Tufts University and got a degree in law and...
It was a Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy. I'd never even heard of that degree, and that's something really special. And that's essentially what she's done around the world.
Absolutely. She does travel all over the world. She is not the kind of director or CEO who sits back in the office and just manages how things happen. She actually gets out in the field, and she's had some wonderful stories that she's told us that we'll be sharing throughout the interview process.
So it's a three-part interview series that we have with Reeta, and something that is real important for everyone to be able to see, and that is the substance of what she's talking about. She's talking about opportunity throughout. And it's not about opportunity to make money. The foundation itself is not a money-making entity.
No, they have $3 billion of assets, and as a foundation, we normally understand only has to spend about 5% of its corpus on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. And if they choose to spend less, they just, in the United States, would just pay some sort of tax on what they're not spending. But so they have plenty of money. What they do is they go out and look for partnerships because they know they're not the very best at managing programs. So what they do is they find the very best partners who do manage the programs and then provide the funding to exponentially increase their results.
And that was something that was really interesting because there are a lot of foundations that will say to you, you know, here's the guidelines when you file an application. That's not the way the Mastercard Foundation works.
No, actually, they do not accept unsolicited proposals or grant applications. They have to come to you and then ask for a partnership agreement. Interestingly, they focus with great organizations like the Skoll Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, so they really exponentially can be very impactful because they pick some of the best in the industry.
And they've also partnered with some smaller organizations that are right down on the ground. And I think that was the thing that impressed me the most. So many of the organizations that they touch, that they partner with, they're not big mammoth organizations. They are working in really low-income countries to try to increase access to capital, access to microfinance, which isn't always the same, and to try to help provide financial services. And that makes sense in light of the business that the Mastercard itself is in, but to be able to help people manage their finances, I mean, that's an incredible thing.
You know, you're absolutely right, Stan. Not only do they work in the microfinance field, which makes sense because of Mastercard, that's where their monies came from, but they also look at youth and youth leadership. And so those two together, because youth are the coming businessmen of the world, it's a nice fit.
Businessmen and women, because there is a big part about girls and women and their access to financial services, which is a very important part. So we're about ready. I hope you are. Here is the first part of our three-part series, the interview with Reeta Roy, right now. So Reeta Roy, President and CEO of the Mastercard Foundation, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
But when we talk about the Mastercard Foundation, it screams business to me. So let's talk business. Give us the 30,000-foot view or the one-floor elevator pitch about the Mastercard Foundation.
Okay, the Mastercard Foundation is a private, global foundation. We're based in Toronto with a mandate to alleviate poverty, and we do this through two ways. One is by advancing solutions to microfinance, and the other is by advancing access to education for young people around the world, particularly those who are living at the bottom of the economic pyramid, particularly those in Africa.
You know, I wouldn't have thought that about the Mastercard Foundation. I actually didn't even know that it existed. And now all of a sudden here you are all over the world doing something where you're getting funds down to the bottom of the pyramid. What do you think is the biggest thing, again from that 30,000-foot view, the biggest thing that enables you to do that?
I think that without question it's partnerships, and it's the collaboration with many different fantastic organizations who really are on the front lines of delivering services. They're delivering things of value, particularly to young people, particularly to women in need. We could not do this. We couldn't be in the 33 countries that we are unless we had those partnerships.
You have brought to the Mastercard Foundation an incredible array of experiences. You've worked with global nonprofits. What was it about the global nonprofits that you found most challenging?
I would say that the global nonprofit world is, first of all, a very diverse world. It's a complicated world in some regards. But one of the most challenging things, I think, for anyone entering this space is landing on what's the most critical issues for the groups that we want to serve, whether it's young people, whether it's women, whether it's people living in Africa who are really seeking to make a living. It's really lending on focus, which is why we're so pleased that we have two clear areas of intervention, microfinance and youth learning. And it's figuring out how to bring these things together and bring these opportunities together in an integrated way, in a holistic way, so that we can make a difference for people.
And so as you work with the Mastercard Foundation, though you're drawing on your experience working with the UN and with bilaterals and in business as well, what is it about all of that experience that prepared you to become one of the leaders of the world in corporate social responsibility?
You are very kind to say that. I feel that I am learning every day, and I have to continue to stay up on issues and continue to be curious and constantly challenge my own assumptions. I'm a believer that everything you did yesterday prepares you for today and for tomorrow. Probably the most critical thing in this work is really about listening, and I think listening is one of the most powerful things a foundation can do. It's an act of respect, but it's also an act of pragmatism. And for us, it means listening to young people, gaining insight from their perspective, from their own life experience, the challenges, as well as the solutions that they see in front of them. And it's that kind of empathy, that level of listening. And in fact, the things which matter most, it's their voices and their views which matter most. And that's what really continues to guide us and to ensure that we're on the right track.
So we talked a little bit about the work experience that prepared you, but I did some checking. And some of the checking that I found is you grew up in Malaysia, you lived in China, you've worked in Africa. So tell us about the Reeta Roy experiences that prepared you to go into this field.
I owe everything to my parents, especially to my mom. I wouldn't be here today if she didn't believe in me and didn't make the investment that she did. When I was a young woman, she always encouraged me to study, to have multiple interests. And my mother mortgaged our house so that I could have an education when I came to the United States after having left Malaysia. And I think it's those values which are instilled as a young person that continue to be my anchor and my compass in so many ways. I've also been extraordinarily fortunate to have many different mentors, many different people who have guided me in my career and in my personal life. and continue to do so today. And so I feel very blessed, very humble that I have this opportunity to lead the foundation, as well as to learn and to continue to grow and develop as a leader.
Now, Malaysia itself is not one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Did you see a lot of poverty growing up?
Absolutely. Both of my parents were in public health. And in fact, at a very early age, early on in our lives, my father and mother encouraged us to participate in the community service and the work that they did. I remember being a young girl at 11, 12 years old, doing volunteer work at the hospital, going to visit patients who were either depressed chronically, doing things with my church as a young woman. And so it was always part of our life. And I think it's something which probably will stay with for the rest of my life.
So at that time, did you have any idea that, wow, you're going to essentially do this kind of work where you're helping other people at all levels of the pyramid, but you're helping other people around the world? Did you think you could do that?
I have to say, never in my wildest dreams I would have thought that I would have had the opportunity to be in the position that I am today. I also have to say that I remember very clearly when I was 9 years old, someone telling me about a place called the United Nations. And I remember being captivated by the idea of people from different parts of the world, across cultural, ethnic boundaries, coming together to solve the world's problems. And it was an idea, though, which stuck with me. And when I was in college and later on in graduate school, the idea of being part of a change and being part of, no matter what vocation that I may have chosen, being part of the positive force in this world in terms of helping others, but also continuing to learn and continue to appreciate the differences in the world. So it's been a marvelous journey.
So from your personal experiences, from your past work experiences, and now from your work with the Mastercard Foundation, what are the differences, if there are any, between those who live in the developed world and those who lived in lower or middle income countries?
I would say on one human level, I think all of us we're connected by the same aspirations, the aspirations to have productive lives, to be able to educate our children, to be able to access health care when we need it, to be able to be productive, and to be, at a very basic level, to be respected and to have dignity in the way we lead our lives. And so in many ways, what we're about at the Foundation is creating a level playing field and finding ways to create equal opportunity for all people to have access to learning, to have access to leadership opportunities, to have access to financial services. Our lives are not so different from people who have less than we do. I think in many ways we're more connected than we realize.
You know, it's interesting that you would use the word opportunity, because we are convinced here at Rainmakers that the more work that we do, the more there's going to be the next George Washington Carver or Marie Curie is going to come from a lower or middle income country. Are you finding something similar to that?
Absolutely. When I have the opportunity to travel, and I never miss the opportunity to engage and speak with young people who are being served by programs, I see future leaders. I see future prime ministers, future doctors, future scientists. And what's standing between them and the realization of their dream is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have the chance to go to school, the chance to have a textbook, the chance to learn about how a computer works. It's some very, very basic and yet practical things. And the more that we can create those opportunities, the better off we will be, because we're going to see leaders emerge from that part of the world.
Well, let's go to some of the specific programs of the Mastercard Foundation. Water.org, Gary White.
Tremendous leader. Tremendous leader.
Tell us about that meeting and then what's happened from there. It seems like it's become a very positive explosion.
You would never think that an organization like ours, a foundation which is focused on microfinance, or focused on education, would have anything to do with Water.org. I met Gary at the Clinton Global Initiative in 2009. And I was immediately inspired by the innovation that Water.org had come up with in terms of getting people access to basic needs, clean water and sanitation. And I was very intrigued by a program they put together called Water Credit, which essentially brings together microfinance organizations and NGOs who understand what it means to educate communities about clean water and sanitation. And the result is that these populations, these communities, get access to loans, which enable them to access whether it's a toilet, whether it's a water line, but it basically to address their critical needs. And so when I'd seen the success Gary had had in India, especially, we started to talk about what could we do? Could we bring this? Could we adapt this and bring this to East Africa? And so that's how our partnerships emerged with water.org. We're going to be working with them in East Africa, starting in Kenya, and eventually rolling out to Uganda. But Gary's organization and water.org is just a phenomenal example of bottoms-up innovation. It's about looking at a problem and really looking at it 360 and coming up with a completely unexpected solution which connects all of us. And so when I think about the work that we're doing in the area of microfinance, it's about ensuring finance is so important, and yet finance in the absence of being connected to other parts of people's lives, how they earn a living, how they educate their children, how they feed and house their families, and how they access clean water, is nothing unless it all comes together in a holistic way. It can't really move people forward. And so we're just thrilled that we could partner with an organization like water.org.
So you can't put water in a silo then?
You absolutely cannot. You absolutely cannot.
So how does the water credit work? Because it sounds like that's microcredit relating to water, but you said it's a bottoms-up solution, so it's people in the various areas are thinking of the solutions themselves?
Yes, it's two ways. Water credit essentially is about educating microfinance organizations about the very basic needs of their clients. And it's not necessarily that they don't know about these needs, but they may not necessarily think about how do we design products which are really tailored to addressing access to water. But what is particularly fantastic is it brings and invites collaboration between microfinance providers, which are very, very good about coming up with financial products, but also NGOs, which are really good and clean and very close to the communities that they're serving, and really understand the critical needs and the buy-in, which it needs to happen at the community level. But what we're also very excited about in terms of this partnership is not just the aspect of credit. What Gary and water.org have wanted to do for some time is also to look at savings. And savings is an area we're especially interested in. And so part of our program is going to help them innovate around coming up with a water savings product as well, and to see how that could be rolled out more broadly to communities in need. You know, it seems so counterintuitive. We never think that people who are living on less than $2 a day can actually save money. And yet, from all the research which has been done and interviews with people in these communities, they are. It's just that they're saving money in places which are insecure. They're saving money under a mattress, in a hole in the wall, under a rug, in a tin box. I've been meeting some young people who told me that they saved money in their shoes because there's no other place to put their money. And so it's such a fundamental basic need which we take for granted. And in places which we've been to in Africa, and particularly in rural places, you can't take these things for granted.
So do you get to talk with some of the people who you've talked about specifically, and you get to say, you know, there might be a better way than putting it in your shoe?
Absolutely, and I think they know there's a better way to putting in their shoe. But the distance, so to speak, both the literal and the figurative distance between them and access to a financial service at a bank, which may be 2 bus rides away and which may actually cost them their savings, is something which has to be closed. That gap needs to be closed. And so much of what we're doing is really helping institutions better understand those needs of the clients and to come up with more innovative ways where they can actually provide a service. And some of that innovation will come through technology. We're all excited about the so-called mobile revolution, but a critical piece is going to be figuring out how we can deliver better services at affordable prices and in a way which is accessible to poor communities through technology.
So it sounds like Prahlad's book, Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, that actually is for real. It really can work.
I think it can work, and I think there are so many different examples, and in many ways the success of microfinance over these last 30 years is proof that it can work. That when we put ourselves and stand in the shoes of people who are right now completely off the grid, who are completely left off in terms of so many basic services. But when we stand in their shoes and think about what it is they need and how they can receive and receive those services in a means that's affordable, in a means that's trusted, there's so many innovative ways. And Gary's organization is just one fine example. What Grameen Bank, which is one of our partners, what BRAC in Bangladesh and now in Uganda has done is another example.
Are there examples of the water.org partnership actually in action yet?
That grant is very, very new. In fact, we just signed on the dotted line a few weeks ago. And so we hope to see that in action, I would say in the next year or so. But it's all staged for a very, very rapid ramp up.
Let's talk about youth entrepreneurship in Africa.
Okay.
That's something that Mastercard Foundation is heavily involved in. It's a solution to what problem?
There are about 1.3 billion young people who live in the developing world, and the vast majority of them are living under $2 a day. There isn't sufficient economic growth in many of these countries to create jobs, particularly as these young people transition from school to work. And the reality is that many young people will have to create their own jobs. And we all know, as a young person, when you have limited life experience, maybe limited access to financial services, limited skills, it's a risky proposition in terms of creating your own job or your own business. And so what we're trying to understand is how can we deliver in a way that, again, that's trusted, that's relevant, that's accessible to young people, deliver market-relevant skills, deliver access to mentors, access to business development services, access to social networks, which they can be part of, and most importantly, the knowledge and access to financial services, knowledge of how to use financial services, so that they can create better options for themselves. Some of them will get jobs, but many of them will have to create their own jobs.
As I was listening to Reeta Roy in the interview that was done there's something that I was wondering, Gail, is just what does $2 a day mean? I mean, to me, $2 a day could be, man, it's a lot if you don't have to spend any money on anything. But maybe that's not the way it is.
No, it's really not the way it is. And I've read several reports in regards to what does $2 a day buy? What does it buy in China? What does it buy in sub-Saharan Africa? Mm-hmm. And when you consider the fact that probably half of their money is going to go for either housing, food, some, minor things.
Yeah, minor things, housing and food. Right.
Housing and food. So they don't have much left over. So if you've got, let's say, $1 a day left over, mm-hmm. what are you going to spend it on? Well, if you look at what the cost of a book is for a child's education or a uniform, it's out of their realm to purchase those kinds of things. If you look at healthcare, completely unaffordable. What you're looking at is the cost of a toothbrush. The cost of a pair of man's flip-flops. It's $1.
$1. So an entire day could be to buy a pair of flip-flops.
An entire day could be to afford to buy shoes. If you've got 4 children in your family, you're not buying shoes.
Wow. Okay, so this is very difficult information to have. So as we talk about people who are living on $2 a day, I always say this to those who say, well, it's a different scale. Say, well, what if they were making $10 a day? Wouldn't that be a good thing? And to a person, they say, well, yeah, it would. And the next question is wouldn't that positively impact the economy in the United States? Most undoubtedly, it would have a positive impact on the U.S. economy.
Well, you're absolutely right. Again, Stan, because what happens is when a family starts prospering, a community prospers. And when a community prospers, a region prospers. And so then that region can actually purchase goods and services. And let's face it, when an economy is doing well, there's less chance of having war.
Yeah, and so many wars that are being fought today are fought over water. And that is something that to a lot of people, and in fact to me too, I was surprised that Mastercard is involved in water, but it was their partnership with water.org.
Exactly. So in 2009, Mastercard Foundation started a micro funding for sanitation, water, and hygiene
tied to water. So is it a water issue or is it a health issue?
Well, it's both. Because if you're clean, you're washing away the germs, you've got clean water, so you're not becoming infected with waterborne illnesses. It's a win-win when you've got a water system.
And there's even a capital aspect to it. There's a way that people are having micro businesses tied into water and water.org and in the partnership with Mastercard to be able to make money in their chain.
So this is so interesting because when you've got a small community and they have no access to clean water and they don't have access to toilets, and you get an entrepreneur out there who takes out a microloan to purchase a latrine, and then they also will purchase things like toilet paper and hand cleaning materials, they can actually charge someone to use the bathroom. Now, we may find that in the United States to be a bit odd, but in an area where it's so rural and they don't have access to clean water and sanitation, it's huge because it does really promote good health.
Well, the interesting thing is that all we have to do is to look back in the U.S. history. That's the way we started. How would we expect any other country to not develop in the same way, except that they may be able to develop faster if there's help that comes from the outside, as long as it enables people on the inside to grow from within.
Now, you're absolutely right again, Stan. You obviously listened really well.
I did. I listened really well.
So one of the things I think that we should probably talk about is water.org and how that organization started. So in 2009, the partnership came together. It was started by a gentleman named Gary White, and he then eventually partnered with Matt Damon. And
we've got 20 seconds left. So the long story short is that water.org and Mastercard have come together to create all of these opportunities for people on the ground in low and middle income countries.
$3.4 million for Mastercard Foundation for Uganda.
Okay. And with that, that's going to be the last word, and you're going to have to stay tuned for part 2 of this incredible interview with Reeta Roy of the Mastercard Foundation. We'll see you on Rainmakers next week.